Anyone that's the atmosphere before a game, I think Game Time Decisions has that same exact atmosphere. This is our arena. This is what we do. There is going to be an energy to Game Time Decisions that you will feel night in and night out. The excitement you get when you lock your bets in, when you're figuring out what you want to do, we can zone in on the biggest games each night. I want this to be the place that people come to before the games start so they feel as ready as possible to lock in their cards. We are going to hit every single one of those markets that you need to know about. We're going to go through every single thing, and I've got a great team behind me that's going to help me get the job done. There is not going to be a better place, I promise you, than Game Time Decisions to get that new information, react to it, and be able to then bet accordingly. We will have everything at our disposal, and we will use that to our advantage. I'm Kevin Walsh. Tune into Game Time Decisions from 6 to 8 p.m. Eastern on SportsGrid.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on SportsGrid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Let's go. Welcome to the Live Golf Team Championship. The golf has been mesmerizing. They are the Live Golf Team Champions.
Team golf is back.
Oh, yes! Are you ready?
Let's go!
That's what champions do.
Welcome in, football fans. We've got college football today, post-game show for you, and it's not just me, Kasey Hudson, rolling through the recaps, and there's nothing to preview, but there are a lot of exciting games, upsets, and headlines that myself and Dubs Anderson have to get to because it's been an exciting day of some college football. We've had, 3 or 4 upsets go down. We've had some tears. We've had some angry fans. We've had some really, really major key tweets that we have to talk about. But first and foremost, we have to see how Dubs is doing, how you're staying awake. I mean, I know it's not as late for you, but how's Saturday rolled through for you so far?
Look, Kasey, I'm doing okay. I wish the bets were doing a little better. And look, we got through week 1 last week, and it was okay. But I don't think we really took away, a lot from that one. But I tell you what, today, Super Saturday has absolutely lived up to the billing. Texas, arguably the win of the season over there in the Big House in Ann Arbor. They were monster. We've seen a couple of the big Heisman contenders rocket up the odds markets. We'll take a couple of the key looks at some of the big movers and a couple of the value plays. But fantastic Saturday.
I agree. And while I have a few things to talk about when it comes to Texas, and then, of course, we're going to rave about my favorite Texan sideline, I want to say ambassadors. I almost called them hosts. Maybe in the near future they end up being the mascot. You and I briefly talked about that before we got on air, but I'll let everybody know where I feel there. I think we've got to talk about the Fighting Irish not having much fight to get across the finish line versus NIU, but it was an emotional win for NIU. And our lovely production team mentioned this nugget. You got Marcus Freeman, who has fallen short when it comes to a 20-plus point spread to teams such as NIU, Marshall, and Samford a couple years ago in his 3 or 4 year time leading the Fighting Irish. So did you see the video of the head coach and his reaction when they beat the Notre Dame team?
Yeah, and look, this was special stuff for Northern Illinois. First top 10 win, massive there. What they go off? 28 and a half point dogs. So look, this was a monster effort. For Notre Dame, not good enough, but for Northern Illinois, I mean, this is what makes college football so fantastic. This is what moves the needle. Thomas Hammock there. And I tell you what, he played back at the program back in the day. He took over the reins here in 2019, and these are the ones that mattered the most. So what a special afternoon it was. Notre Dame had a real good chance at the death there, trying to send one between the posts, but it just wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, I mean, I would say this, heading into this matchup, I think it was noted that both of these teams were going to probably stack up defensively. It just was underestimated how well the Huskies were able to do so. I know they're really strong in their defensive front, but it was a good win in terms of what college football is all about, bringing that emotion back to the game. And it wasn't a massive loss for Notre Dame, but it was a worthy win for the Huskies. Another game that went down today, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but you got Texas versus Michigan. There were a lot of question marks on how Michigan was going to produce offensively and what this win would mean for Texas and what this loss would mean for Michigan. Lines, I'm sure, started changing immediately when they saw that Texas was not only going to win this one, but kind of put a beating on Michigan, who tried to get something going in the second half. But what'd you take away from this game besides the fact that Matthew McConaughey is not only probably an ambassador for the Longhorns, but soon to be their next mascot? I'm sure of it.
Kasey, I thought we went over this in week one. The Matthew McConaughey, it's got to stop. And look, he was there in full force, and Texas came ready to play 31-12. And this was a career performance from Quinn Ewers. He throws for 3 passing touchdowns. We saw it last season. He stands up in tall moments. This was as big as it gets there at the Big House. In Michigan, Ann Arbor, there was 111,000 there at the stadium, and he silenced them early in this one. They got off to the jump. Michigan were playing catch-up football, and they really couldn't rally to get back into this one. So in terms of standout performances as a team, I thought it was the Longhorns. And in terms of the individual brilliance, Quinn Ewers put on an absolute masterclass, and what a spot to do it, especially in front of Matthew McConaughey. They're cheering him on from the sidelines.
I know, and he's got the swag, he's got the composure. They're limiting or keeping to 0 turnovers. They're not making any mistakes out there. Obviously, a lot of credit has to go to their head coach. I mean, some of the play calls out there have just been brilliant and so timely. But what sweet nothings is Matthew McConaughey whispering to these guys' ears on the sideline? I mean, he's keeping them amped up. He's keeping them excited. I know he's Matthew McConaughey, but you said enough is enough, Dubs. I got to get your opinion on this. How many more sideline games is he there pushing this team through to a victory?
Look, I think he's going to push them all the way to the national championship. Taking a look at these numbers that we saw from the star quarterback for the Longhorns, Quinn Ewers. We knew he was going to be a big threat coming in for this year, but to do it in this environment, he's got Arch Manning looking over the shoulder, but nothing deters him, and that is why Quinn Ewers will be the starting quarterback and one of the top choices in the Heisman market after week 2 here in college football. And on the other side for me, for Michigan, this was not good enough. You know, the offense has gone missing again. It was 23 straight wins at home, and they just didn't show up ready to play. And if you take something away from this one, who are the contenders? Who are the pretenders? Well, I think we can figure that out. The Texas Longhorns, they look fantastic out there, led by Quinn Ewers.
Absolutely. I will say, too, we know that the quarterback for Michigan, Warren, is quite on the young side, and he was trying really hard to extend some plays today, but it just wasn't enough. He looked like he had a blind spot every time he went to go look downfield. He did have one good quality connect, I would say, with Loveland, but outside of that, they couldn't get anything going. They couldn't have consistent connections. Their run game doesn't exist. So there's a lot of question marks around what the Michigan program is going to look like as they move through this season. Now, kind of circling back to how you mentioned pretenders or the team that's going to show up. Texas showed up. You got Georgia still sitting at the top of the charts. You got Ohio State putting down a beating right now, and they're sitting right behind Georgia. And you got Texas at 3, Oregon shortly behind them, and then Alabama. Let's talk about these top 5 teams for just a second. Georgia, obviously, clear top clearly deserve their rank at the top. Ohio State, the competition has been, I would say, maybe kind of good enough to put them there, but still, you're not beating up on any great teams. You got Texas, who actually pulled through in quality competition. You got Oregon, that had a slow start last week. We'll see what translates tonight. And then Alabama just barely made it through USF, even though now they're stacking up the touchdowns. Does this seem reasonable for a top 5?
Yeah, I think it's spot on. I guess, Georgia certainly solidified their spot, their top billing. I think Texas made the argument that they're certainly going to be top 3. Ohio State, you can make the argument we really haven't seen as much as what Georgia and Texas have shown us. Oregon, a little shaky there through week 1. We need a bit more of a measuring stick to see where they stack up. And I would say a team that lost a bit of confidence for me. I know Bama are trying to put up the points there, as you highlighted now, but going through the first through 3 quarters of this game for Jalen Milroe and that Bama offense, they have really struggled to get things going. So it looks like they ultimately will go close to covering that number, but a little concerning for Bama early in this one. I thought they should have made light work.
Would you almost throw a fraud alert on them, or is that just me being a Florida girl who always wants to root against Alabama and company?
To say that to say it's early days and maybe we haven't seen enough, I don't know, Kasey. And this is the great thing about college football. Week one, we're trying to come away with who impressed, who's going to panic stations, but we can see so much improvement from week one to week two to week three. It's early doors for Milroe and Bama. They're going to figure things out. I was bullish on them last week. Look, they're still going to go on to get the W. That's what you want to see at this point in the season. Build a bit of confidence, work on those, I guess, some of the combinations that we didn't get a good chance to see last season. Bama are going to figure things out. If they can continue to pick up these wins, that's all they need.
Yeah, and speaking of building confidence, we did see a confident performance out of Iowa State versus Iowa. Iowa usually having the upper hand in this matchup, but a poetic story when it comes to their kicker making the 54-yard field goal to clinch the win for the Cyclones, and only his second career game at Iowa State. A lot to compete here. Iowa State rallying back into this game and then completely taking over. So that was something where I was so locked in, thinking it was going to be a low-scoring game or at least a low total, under 35.5. Pretty crazy, right? Because that total is insane. But look, at least they came out to play, and we saw some great things out of Iowa State. And as Dubs mentioned, we saw a lot of confidence, at least from one side of the roster. But we got a few more games to recap. We've got to look at some futures and see how things are going to pan out in college football. So don't go anywhere. Stick with us at College Football Today, the post-game show with Kasey Hudson and Dubs. We got a lot more action to get to on the other side of this quick break.
Buy or sell, Anthony Richardson will be a top 7 fantasy quarterback this season. We're keeping this realistic here. We know that nobody would think that he'll be in the top 3, probably not even the top 5. How about top 7, George? Buy or sell?
If he stays healthy, top 5 is not out of question here at all. He's a running quarterback. We know how valuable they can be. My worry is going to be what I mentioned when we talked about the Indianapolis Colts. Boy, man, if Pittman were to go down, there's not a lot to throw. He'll be running for his life half the time there. I like Richardson a lot. Small sample size of what we saw of what he's going to be. I played the 5 games last year before the injury here. So for a longer season, we'll see if he gets some catch up to him, what he can do. He's going to have to prove he can throw the ball to be down the field here. I'm going to buy this. All right, I want to buy on Anthony Richardson. I want him to be that guy because I want to see the excitement that he can bring. I think smart money might say go the other way because there's so many quarterbacks in that tier that hey, he can have a good year and still not finish top 7. That being said, I think he will show just like he did last year. He's going to be dynamic. I'm buying top 7.
Yeah, reminds me so much of Cam Newton in the early days too. I'm going to sell on this. I think it's too high. I think most leagues take away points for interceptions. If that's the case, I think his numbers are going to be 20-something touchdowns, 15, 16-something interceptions. That's going to negate some stuff. Yes, he will run. Can he play an entire season? Still very questionable for me. I have him as the 9th best fantasy quarterback at the end of the season, just outside the top 7. So I'm going to go sell on that.
Welcome back into College Football Today, the post-game show with myself, Kasey Hudson, and Dubs Anderson. And we're running through the top games of the day, some of the top upsets. We haven't even touched the surface on some of the most frustrating games in college football today. But before we get there, we have got to break down the current games that are going on. And plus, later on in the segment on College Football Today, Dubs and I have to kind of match up and see what our betting cards looked like. I know one of mine I want to throw in the shredder and completely burn down, but we'll see if Dubs had better luck with his. We've got Missouri on top of Buffalo right now, 38-0, or not right now. That's the final in the bag. Then you've got Alabama that ended up rallying, as I mentioned, versus South Florida. But this was neck and neck all the way up until halfway through the fourth quarter. Then we finally saw glimmers of the Alabama team that most people know and love. Mind you, I said most people, not all of us. But we saw this competition happen last year. We saw USF be able to run the ball down Alabama's throat, so I'm not entirely surprised or judging Alabama unfairly, everyone. Relax. Then you got Tennessee versus NC State. Everyone knows how high I am on the quarterback for Tennessee and how he was going to air out the ball. I'd say 51 points is saying just that. 51-10 versus the Wolfpack. You got Nico at 211 passing yards, 2 tutties, but also 2 interceptions. Then you got Sampson on the ground going to work, 132 rushing yards and 2 tutties. And then you got White with 67 receiving yards for Tennessee as they continue to roll. Under 2 minutes now in the fourth quarter. Ohio State, we mentioned the beating that they put up, their final being 56-0. I don't know if you guys say nil for American football, yeah? Doesn't matter.
I'd throw it in there. Kasey. Yeah, I throw. They blanked them 3-0, 4-0. That's a bit of Premier League talk coming across, but yeah, absolutely. I
think it's because we were just talking about that. I did say 0-0 on a program here once, and somebody popped up and was like, no, we don't say that. Well, it happens. And it happened again. Then you got LSU 44-21 and Oklahoma really cutting it close versus Houston, but Houston can be a sneaky team in the trenches. 16-12, they pull off the victory. Clemson letting everyone know that they are not dead and they shouldn't be undervalued. But, I mean, it was Appalachian State. 66-20. And we've seen a little bit of everything. We've seen Clemson be able to run the ball. We've seen them be able to air out the ball. We've seen their defense create turnovers. We have seen a Clemson team that wants to compete in the ACC. You got Klubnik with right at 378 passing yards, 5 touchdowns. The run game went wild, but it's also going to be Wesco Jr. for me, 130 receiving yards, and then Brennington Stool, 100 receiving yards. Combine these two guys, 3 touchdowns. Clemson had some fun, and it continues to roll as they've got under 9 minutes in the fourth quarter. Boise State and Oregon, Boise on top by 2, or actually just made it 3, 17-14 versus Oregon as they get gearing towards halftime, under 5 minutes left there. Arizona sitting at 3 towards North AZ on top by 10, and then USC and Utah State just got going. So, wow, a lot of college football. And in
Party
that long
doesn't
spiel,
stop.
It does not. It does not, because it's just getting started on the West Coast. By the time I close my eyes, it's going to be like halftime, and all the excitement's going to be continuing to go down. But we got to talk about one of the other most exciting games on the docket today, Dubs, and it was the fact that Penn State, a team that we saw be so physical, so aggressive, so snarly last week, kind of fall short this week. I mean, Bowling Green controlled the entire game up until halfway through the third quarter. Then we saw that punishing defense come to life, and then they completely took over the game, winning 34-27. But, I mean, they couldn't stop the run game for the life of them versus Bowling Green. What did you think?
Yeah, offense was a little stagnant this afternoon for the Nittany Lions, but I tell you what, lucky they get the W. Survive, advance, move on to the next one, 34-27, and they had to put up 14-3 there in the second half to make sure they went on to get the score there. For Penn State, they had 2 players going for more than 100 rushing. So the ground game was very, very strong there. We had Nicholas Singleton followed by Allen. They're both toed the rock for more than 100. So they set the foundation. They set the tone for the Bowling Green Falcons. I mean, didn't really expect this kind of threat coming towards Penn State. But, hey, they really made a game of this one. You could see from the jump they really came ready to play there. Pretty efficient quarterback play. They really couldn't get much going with that run game. But I tell you what, Harold Finnan had himself an afternoon, 11 receptions for 137 receiving yards and a touchdown there. So if you're looking for a bit of a moneymaker, a cover special, Bowling Green, the old Falcons, they could cause a bit of a stir as we move through the season. But for Penn State, 34-27, just enough to get it done.
And the sportsbook must have known something that we didn't, because I'd say this, about 2 hours before kickoff, you saw a lot of people jumping on laying the numbers when it came to Bowling Green. So there's a lot of happy football fans out there aside from just really good football today. But Penn State kind of sitting in that 8th place spot when it comes to the national championship odds. You saw them have a great performance last week, come out roaring, completely dominant. You saw them a little shaky versus this Bowling Green team today. Let's play a game. Overreact or don't react quite yet to Penn State's performances over these last 2 weeks and them sitting right at 8th spot in the national championship conversation.
I think 8's spot on. They should be at single digits. They're one of the top 10 teams in the nation. But I tell you what, if you're covering 35.5, you certainly got to make a better job of it going against the Falcons here. But for Penn State, I think they'll hold on to a top 10 spot, maybe losing a bit of confidence here through week 2. But again, it's week 2. We're still trying to figure things out. We've got some new faces in new places. So they're a top 10 team in the nation at that 8th spot. I think that's pretty sharp.
And then speaking of sharp performances, you've got Avery Johnson. He was Mr. Gatorade. He's Mr. a lot of things. He's got a great hairhead going on, I can tell you that. But slow start for Kansas State today versus Tulane. Tulane was all over them defensively, offensively, and then they make this massive comeback to pull off the victory. But this is what this team is about. Kansas State is known for having the ability to rally. They've got a big competition coming at them next week. But what did you think of this matchup and Avery Johnson's performance?
I thought Kansas State showed a lot of moxie, a lot of grit. We saw with a strong second half performance there, both sides of the ball. It was just enough to get it done. For Tulane, a couple of costly mistakes late in this one that they're going to look back on and really strew. So I thought it was a big performance. It showed a bit of character, probably lacked a bit of polish, but it was the standout for me. It was complementary football, and that's what you need if you want to make a go of this thing going through the next couple of months, though. So for 17 in the nation, Kansas State, I thought it was pretty impressive.
Yeah, you want to see that kind of grit. Like you said, it's still early, but it makes for great football. Avery Johnson wrapped up the day with right at 181 passing yards, 2 tutties. Didn't use his legs as much as everyone thought, but 40 rushing yards is not bad. As I mentioned, though, we still have a couple other upsets to chat about. We have some other games to break down. We got championship odds to see where the value may lie after getting through this week of college football, so don't go anywhere. This is us here on the other side of this parade.
Buy or sell, Anthony Richardson will be a top 7 fantasy quarterback this season. We're keeping this realistic here. We know that nobody would think that he'll be in the top 3, probably not even the top 5. How about top 7, George? Buy or sell?
You know, if he stays healthy, top 5 is not out of question here at all. He's a running quarterback. We know how valuable they can be. My worry is going to be what I mentioned when we talked about the Indianapolis Colts. Boy, man, if Pittman were to go down, there's not a lot to throw. He'll be running for his life half the time there. I like Richardson a lot. Small sample size of what we saw of what he's going to be. I played the 5 games last year before the injury here. So over a longer season, we'll see if he gets some catch up to him, what he can do. He's going to have to prove he can throw the ball to be down the field here. I'm going to buy this. All right, I want to buy on Anthony Richardson. I want him to be that guy because I want to see the excitement that he can bring. That I think, smart money might say go the other way because there's so many quarterbacks in that tier that, hey, he could have a good year and still not finish top 7. That being said, I think he will show, just like he did last year, he's going to be dynamic. I'm buying top 7.
Yeah, reminds me so much of Cam Newton in the early days too. I'm going to sell on this. I think it's too high. I think most leagues take away points for interceptions. If that's the case, I think his numbers are going to be 20-something touchdowns, 15, 16-something interceptions. That's going to negate some stuff. Yes, he will run. Can he play an entire season? Still very questionable for me. I have him as the 9th best fantasy quarterback at the end of the season, just outside the top 7. So I'm going to go sell on that.
Welcome back into college football today here on SportsGrid TV. Kasey Hudson and Dubs Anderson hanging with you guys at this 11 to 12 hour, at least on the East Coast, because Dubs gets to kind of get his evening back. You get to rock through this show and hopefully go have some fun, whereas some of us have to get to sleep and do more football tomorrow, but I'm not complaining. That's the beautiful thing about being in season. I think it's time for us to talk about the Heisman odds and see if anything has moved around, because we have guys like Quinn Ewers, who are living up to the expectation, making a case to sit at the top of this conversation. We had a slow start out of Oregon's quarterback last week that had a lot of people wondering, what the heck do I do with this? Do I put some money on it and still hope and cross my fingers he's going to do something? So we got to pick your brain, Dubs. We got to see where you stand with this one. Currently, Oregon is battling it out with Boise State. You got Dylan Gabriel with 131 passing yards, 1 touchdown. And I'd say that while they are trailing by 3, we're seeing a little bit better compete than we did last week. So when you're looking at the odds, what stands out to you and what needs to kind of take a seat back?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest market move we saw here today at the book, certainly Quinn Ewers for the Longhorns. He skyrockets the top choice in the Heisman market, now sitting at plus 600 at 6-1. Second choice, Cam Ward. He's now sitting at plus 850, and Dylan Gabriel at 9-1 there. You highlighted currently in the mix there, Oregon taking on Boise State. The numbers he's putting up are pretty strong. We saw that through week 1, monster numbers, but that's because they needed everything from Gabriel trying to get that win going through the second half. But it was Quinn Ewers again for me. I mean, we saw it last season, a couple of signature wins. This is certainly going to be another feather in the cap. Going into Ann Arbor, 110,000 screaming Michigan fans, one of the strongest defenses in the nation, and he absolutely carved him up. What do you go for? 350 passing yards, 3 tutties. He looked very professional. He looked poised. He looks mature. And they suddenly look like a national championship contender. Well, that's going to go a long way in helping his chances in taking out the Heisman. So that was the biggest standout for me. It's still a chalky play, and that tells us everything we need to know. The odds makers really can't figure this one out from what we saw preseason numbers to where we're sitting here in week 2. It's Quinn Ewers at plus 600, but with one sort of spotty performance, and I think it will help Quinn Ewers going over the next couple of weeks for Texas. They get a couple of cupcakes so he can really pump up the stat sheet. I think he could shorten up over the next 2 to 3 weeks and maybe even hit that 5-1 plus 500 mark. So Quinn Ewers stand out for me here in week 2. Dylan Gabriel, he's going to have to do a little bit more this evening, I should say. And Carson Beck, I mean, he really hasn't put a foot wrong, but he hasn't had, and that's the knock against a lot of these other choices in the Heisman market. They haven't been tested like we saw Quinn Ewers out there today.
Yeah, absolutely. And you make a great point to mention. I love when you say the cupcake thing for the schedule. But yes, it's going to get a little cupcakey. You've got USTA versus Texas coming in on September 14th, and then LA Monroe after that, Mississippi State after that, and then Texas and Oklahoma. Oklahoma can sneak in the mix, but the next big competition isn't until October 19th versus Georgia, where we're going to see him versus Carson Beck and which guy really can come out on top of that one. But this brings me to another question, because there's you've got, let's say, Quinn Ewers in Texas that have a bit of the cupcake situation coming up for 2 more games. But then also for Miami, I mean, you've got them going against Ball State and USF. Yes, USF just gave Alabama a run, but I think they just have a close compete. And then for Georgia, they've got Kentucky, and then they've got Alabama next. So with, let's say, the top quarterbacks right now having 2 games ahead of them that are probably winnable or in favor of their team coming out on top, which team or which quarterback do you think has the biggest compete?
I think it would have to be Carson Beck, still sitting there at plus 1,000 at 10-1. I mean, he's put up some really good looking numbers there. What was it? 5 touchdown passes in today's one, just through 2.5 quarters of action there for the Bulldogs. They got the rush game going as well there. So I think Carson Beck's played the price play on this board. I still love every bit of Quinn Ewers as the shortest price. It's probably only going to firm up a little further there over the next couple. But if you're looking at the Heisman market, you certainly want to correlate it with a national championship contender with Beck and Ewers. It looks like, I know it's early days, but they're certainly playing for 2 of the top 2 teams in the nation.
Am I crazy to have any appeal towards Tennessee's quarterback? Nico, I'm not even going to go for his last name. It's too late in the hour to go for that.
Say it. Get it out there. Nico.
Lamalaliva.
Yeah.
You say it.
Yeah. No. You put the hand up for that one. But Nico, with Tennessee, the Vols sitting there at plus 1,400, has looked very dynamic. So still a couple of price plays here. It is early days, and that's the great thing about jumping in to play the futures.
Yep, that's where risk it to get the biscuit. Of course, I had to go with the Bruce Arians phrase because why not? Tampa Girl's got to throw her stuff in the mix. But we've got more odds and futures you want to keep an eye on. We're going to update the scores, so go nowhere after this quick break.
buy or sell. Anthony Richardson will be a top 7 fantasy quarterback this season. We're keeping this realistic here. We know that nobody would think that he'll be in the top 3, probably not even the top 5. How about top 7, George? Buy or sell?
You know, if he stays healthy, top 5 is not out of question here at all. He's a running quarterback. We know how valuable they can be. My worry is going to be what I mentioned when we talked about the Indianapolis Colts. Boy, man, if Pittman were to go down, there's not a lot to throw. He'll be running for his life half the time there. I like Richardson a lot. Small sample size of what we saw of what he's going to be. I played the 5 games last year before the injury here. So over a longer season, we'll see if he gets to catch up to him, what he can do. He's going to have to prove he can throw the ball. So be down the field here. I'm going to buy this. All right, I want to buy on Anthony Richardson. I want him to be that guy because I want to see the excitement that he can bring. I think, you know, smart money might say go the other way because there's so many quarterbacks in that tier that, hey, he could have a good year and still not finish top 7. That being said, I think he will show, just like he did last year, he's going to be dynamic. I'm buying top 7.
Yeah, reminds me so much of Cam Newton in the early days too. I'm going to sell on this. I think it's too high. I think most leagues take away points for interceptions. If that's the case, I think his numbers are going to be 20-something touchdowns, 15, 16-something interceptions. That's going to negate some stuff. Yes, he will run. Can he play an entire season? Still very questionable for me. I have him as the 9th best fantasy quarterback at the end of the season, just outside the top 7. So I'm going to go sell on that.
You are watching College Football Today, the post-game show with Kasey Hudson and Dubs Anderson. I almost called you Andy. Wow. It is, we're working through this 11 to 12 hour. We're recapping the top games. We're talking about the upsets. We're looking at futures. We were just talking about the Heisman if you are just now joining us, which I forgot to mention this, but of course we cut to a break, Dubs, regardless. Colorado took on Nebraska. A lot of happy Nebraska fans today. Nebraska putting on a thumping 28-10. You got a Colorado team that has a lot of talent, but a lot of, I want to say, reservation to jump in on the bandwagon and think that they're going to have this tremendous year. But their quarterback has been in the conversation in terms of making a jump for the Heisman topic. Is this something that's dwindling away after falling short to Nebraska?
Yeah, they did not look good out there this evening. It was a total mismatch. It was a heavyweight going against a middleweight. There was a lot of smoke. There was a lot of talk leading up for this one. And look, for Shedeur Sanders, he did everything in his power, but that offensive line, that was the big thing that had to show improvement this season if they wanted to contend, if Shedeur Sanders wanted to put himself into the Heisman conversation. Obviously, he has no power over that offensive line, but they were giving him no protection. He had no time. I believe he was sacked 5 times out there in today's game going against Nebraska. They looked a little better in the second half and trying to get it downfield, but the offense was stagnant to say the least. Nebraska, I mean, they was doing their best to stay out there as long as possible. So for Coach Prime time, it is back to the drawing board, but this was a beatdown of the highest order, and it'd be really tough on the betting side of things to endorse Shedeur Sanders. He is still going to put that team on his back. He's going to do his best in the pocket, out of the pocket, getting it downfield. I do think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the country, but in terms of that betting market for the Heisman, it's really tough trying to see in a way in which he can get this team to a couple more W's, which they obviously would need if he were to factor in for that bet.
Yeah, I'm going to say that the pressure is going to kind of start to become more apparent here for this team. And as much as we all love Deion Sanders and company, I mean, there is a lot of pressure. The expectation coming into the season was that they were just going to win it hands down because they had the momentum and the swag last season. Swag can only carry you so far, folks. You got Saunders for 244 passing yards today, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. The next hot topic on this roster being Travis Hunter, 10 receptions, 110 yards. I mean, monster yardage, but not being able to get the job done, not being able to convert in key plays, having messy third down situations, it's not going to get you very far, especially versus Nebraska. And then sticking with the Heisman theme, numbers, maybe some sneaky values in there. You and I kind of chatted about this guy last week. Jackson Dart, Ole Miss. He's a fun quarterback to watch. Has a strong arm on him, and I love any kind of quarterback that can be in that dual threat category. Loves to turn on the wheels when he gets the opportunity. Another beating went down. 50, 60 points. And then you've got Dart sitting 1, 2, 3, 4 in fourth place for the Heisman odds and conversation. What do you think about Dart and his continued progressive performance?
Yeah, again, probably tough to really know how strong the measuring stick is. But put up 418 passing yards, 5 passing tutties there in week 1, and absolutely beat the brakes off. We saw it again here this afternoon. Another dominant performance for Ole Miss. So to say that he's a part of the equation, absolutely. But this is a play where I'd want to see a little more at plus 900 at 9-1 to be alongside Dylan Gabriel. I'd probably want to see a couple of more big performances, a couple of, stronger contenders. But again, doing everything right. And at this point of the season, for us as bettors, as handicappers, it's not so much of showing us that top gear. It's a matter of not showing us what you're lacking. And so far, it's been strength to strength for Jackson Dart, who certainly looks to get it downfield. Very, very strong arm, and certainly looks to be one of the more athletic quarterbacks in this market as well.
Now, a question that just popped into my mind. It could be for newer bettors. It could be just in general. When's probably a good time in the season to start kind of gauging these I don't want to just say quarterbacks, top players in the nation, and where the best lines and odds are for the Heisman Trophy conversation, because it is very early, and we are seeing a lot of teams and quarterbacks that kind of have either a really light schedule for the next 3 weeks or maybe one sprinkle of competition in the mix. But when's like a good time to gauge this?
Yeah, it depends, obviously the schedule and how the things are shaping up. So, for a team like the Rebels, they've got a couple of decent matches. Wake Forest is probably going to be a stern test from next week, so we can take a bit away from that one. Then it's Southern after that, but then it gets really serious. You've got Kentucky, South Carolina on the road. You're taking on the Tigers on the road, and then you go against Oklahoma. So I would say this week, next week, you're only going to lose value on that number. You'd lose, with a couple big stats performances, it's certainly going to shorter up a little further. If you do think he is the genuine contender, we'll jump in prior to those. But if you want to see a little something, 3 or 4 weeks, and then we're going to know everything we need to know about the Rebels, Ole Miss, Jackson Dart, if they are a serious contender.
Yeah. I got to vent about something, Dubs. One of the busts
let's get it off the chest. Come on, what do we got?
One of the reasons that I have to shred every betting card for the day is because I didn't expect Baylor to beat Utah. Utah just looked better on paper in a number of ways. I knew that they were going to want to redeem themselves after kind of having an injury-prone season last year and not being able to display all of their talent. And then you come into this game and Baylor can't score in the first half at all. They did get back into it, but Utah completely abused them for almost 3 quarters before they showed up and had a pulse. Were you sweating this game? Did you have any skin in the game for this one, or am I a lone island here?
No, and I tell you what, I had the Utes. I had Utah, but the biggest investment I had was Cam Rising and his passing prop. Well, Cam Rising, he started the game like a superstar, and I'm massive on his stock. I think he's a fantastic quarterback, and that's why I was bullish on Utah to cover the number. He gets thrown into the Gatorade cooler on the sideline and has to exit, and suddenly that passing prop, it's nowhere to be seen. So, look, for Utah, it was a big performance. We got to see Isaac Wilson, the younger brother of Zach Wilson, come into the game. He's certainly got a bit of ability there. So for the Utes to get it done 23-12 over the Bears, it wasn't good enough from Baylor, but I'll tell you what, that was probably one of the worst beats I had here for week 2. Cam Rising, he's gone through enough, my guy. He started this game in fantastic fashion. He goes 8 for 14, 92 passing yards, and 2 touchdowns. And I'm thinking, wow, we're not even getting into the second quarter here. We may hit this one by halftime. Wasn't meant to be, but for the Utes, ranked at 11 in the nation, it was still a good win for them.
Yeah. I feel a little bit better now that I know that I wasn't alone in that one, because, all the confidence in the world, outside of the fact that, crazy enough, I had Baylor winning the first half, but I thought it was going to be that much closer, and then I thought it was going to be a complete takeoff for Utah in the second half. Rising has been through a lot. You mentioned that. He's just coming back from injury from last season. His previous biggest stats were from 2022, but still remarkable. He's one of those quarterbacks that you want to entertainingly watch and keep an eye on, but I was in pain. and it completely ruined half of my card because I thought we were going to see a lot more action. What did you go with for Rising for today? Because I altered it to, I want to say, over 200 plus passing yards.
Yeah, it was 220.5 passing yards for me, and I thought he was on a great trajectory to get over that number. Wasn't meant to be, but from all reports coming across, it's not as serious as they first thought. So we're going to have to wait until we get the official confirmation. But I guess that's good news if you're a Utes fan. It's certainly there for Cam Rising, who's already gone up against enough adversity for his college career. But 14.5 was the number for Utah. They're obviously not going to cover that. And that total was actually quite a high one, 52.5 points. This turned out to be quite the throwdown arm wrestle, if you will. And for Zach Wilson's younger brother, interested to see if they get him a little more involved going further into the season. He certainly looks like he's got a bit of talent.
You think he's somebody who can add another Wilson to the NFL? Could we see this?
Hey, we ain't done with Zach yet. We ain't done with Zach yet. I think in the right scenario, he could still flourish and find that top gear. But yeah, it's two mamas boys. Why not? They can both come in the league together.
Wow, we have to unpack that because I feel like he's kind of been wronged for the roles that he has been placed in the NFL. But wow, you passionately still feel like Wilson is not done yet. This startled me a little bit. I'm very excited to see where you go with this one, and I'm sure other fans are. But don't go anywhere. We got another quick break here on College Football Today, the post-game show. So hang out with us after this break.
Buy or sell, Anthony Richardson will be a top 7 fantasy quarterback this season. We're keeping this realistic here. We know that nobody would think that he'll be in the top 3, probably not even the top 5. How about top 7, George? Buy or sell?
You know, if he stays healthy, top 5 is not out of question here at all. He's a running quarterback. We know how valuable they can be. My worry is going to be what I mentioned when we talked about the Indianapolis Colts. Boy, man, if Pittman were to go down, there's not a lot to throw to. He'll be running for his life half the time there. I like Richardson a lot. Small sample size of what we saw of what he's going to be. I played the 5 games last year before the injury here. So over a longer season, we'll see if he gets some catch up to him, what he can do. He's going to have to prove he can throw the ball to be down the field here. I'm going to buy this. All right, I want to buy on Anthony Richardson. I want him to be that guy because I want to see the excitement that he can bring. I think smart money might say go the other way because there's so many quarterbacks in that tier that hey, he could have a good year and still not finish top 7. That being said, I think he will show just like he did last year. He's going to be dynamic. I'm buying top 7.
Yeah, reminds me so much of Cam Newton in the early days too. I'm going to sell on this. I think it's too high. I think most leagues take away points for interceptions. If that's the case, I think his numbers are going to be 20-something touchdowns, 15, 16-something interceptions. That's going to negate some stuff. Yes, he will run. Can he play an entire season? Still very questionable for me. I have him as the 9th best fantasy quarterback at the end of the season, just outside the top 7. So I'm going to go sell on that.
Back at it with college football today here on SportsGrid TV. Kasey Hudson and Dubs Anderson getting you through the recaps, top headlines, and getting ready to look ahead at some of the top games next week. But before we do that, I wasn't going to let you off the hook, Dubs. Zach Wilson, we're unpacking this for 2 seconds. Love for him at the Broncos. Do you think he still has some revitalization for a career here? And I'm not a hater.
Yeah,
I think that he was wrongly done. I would say that.
Yeah, and look, what's he had? A couple of years in the league now, 3 years in the league. He's still only 24 years of age. He's never really had the best chance to flourish. Obviously, it didn't work out over there in New York, but I think he'll be traded early in the season. Bo Nix, he's going to be the guy there in Denver, but Zach Wilson, he has still got plenty to offer. His best years are still 10 years into the future, Kasey. Some team will be knocking on that door. Mark my words, by week 2, by week 3. It's not going to be in Denver. It'll be somewhere else, but Zach Wilson, he is good enough to be a starter in the league. There, I said it. It was great to see his younger brother out there for Utah this afternoon.
There, I said it, and you circle back to college football. Would it not be perfect reality TV if he ends up in Dallas? Zach Wilson to the Cowboys.
Wow. Yeah, I could see it.
That's how you stir
I could
the
see
pot.
it.
That's how you stir the pot. But speaking of stirring the pot, we've got a Notre Dame team that played very well versus the Aggies. They got a lot of people hopeful for what their season would hold, and then you come in and have this massive fall short, but they have to look ahead. Football players say it all the time. Actually, every sport says it all the time. You got to turn the page, and you got to move on. So turning the page, they take on Purdue next week. Purdue has not beaten Notre Dame since 2007, but we're seeing a lot of interesting turn of events for all of these historic numbers and totals and statistics between these teams. Anything flattering between this matchup next week between number 5 Notre Dame and Purdue?
No, I think it's going to be a fantastic showdown. I think the Boilermakers are certainly going to be primed up for this one. For Notre Dame, I mean, it's got to be a turnaround spot. That was absolutely dismal what we saw earlier today. To lose as 4 touchdown favorites. I mean, that's not good enough for mine. Freeman, 29 games as a head coach, and to come up with that kind of performance, sorry, not buying in. So there we've got the early line at 10.5. Purdue at home, from what we have seen, they can put up plenty of points, plenty of offense. And for Notre Dame, that's going to be the big question mark. Can they get the points on the board there? For Riley Leonard, didn't look great in the pocket. I think he's certainly a better quarterback when he brings in the running game. He has got to get rushing. It opens things up downfield for him as well and just takes a bit of pressure out of the pocket there. So I think Riley Leonard, he's got to get back to running the football. Notre Dame, it's going to be a get-right spot. Similar thing to what we saw Clemson, after being embarrassed in week 1. They turned it around with a big performance. The Fighting Irish, they will come to play in week 3. But 10.5, that's a big number to cover on the road.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I want this for Riley Leonard. I think he's got a great story. I think that he has a big season ahead of him and a lot to prove, but they got to do better than whatever happened today. 28-point favorites and you blow it. Probably not the most flattering thing to get your season underway. Now, another team put the beat down in week 1. Barely, or I want to say narrow escape versus USF, but the score would say otherwise at the final. But then you got Alabama taking on Wisconsin coming up here. Only the 3rd time that these two teams are meeting, by the way. First meeting was back in 1928. And I only just find that fascinating because why did it take forever? 2015 would be the second meet, 3rd one coming up here. But Alabama has a lot to prove, in my opinion, and Wisconsin can be sneaky. Anything that stands out with this one?
I think it's a really good number for Bama. They look really promising in week 1. They were a little sluggish here earlier today to get things going, but eventually Milroe got that offense firing. So at 9.5, I've seen that number open up there for the Crimson Tide. I think it's a really good spot. For Wisconsin, the Badgers, they start their season going 2-0, but this is going to be a massive step up going against still one of the best teams in the nation. I know Nick Saban's not there, but I think Alabama, they will come, and I think they can put up plenty of points on Wisconsin at 9.5. I love the early look. I expect that we will see a bit of movement with this number. May hit 10, may hit 10.5 the further we get into the week. So if you do like Bama, like myself, now's not a bad time to jump on it.
Like yourself. I do have a friend that keeps messaging me, and she's like, can you please say roll, tie, roll on air? And even though I just said it, she wants me to be convicted and passionate about it. I just can't do it. I just cannot do it. But maybe you're right, and maybe things continue to roll in their favor, especially after Saban Field becoming a thing today, which is, of course, well-deserved by Coach Saban and all that he has done for that squad and organization. We do have to figure out what's going to happen if Michigan falls short at home yet again. You got Arkansas State coming in. Michigan playing first game off a loss in a regular season since 2021. We know they've got some issues going on. We know they couldn't string together an offense. I thought they still were going to have a bit of a promising defense, but I mean, say they lose this game, what are we looking at when it comes to the odds?
I'd say if they lose this game, there go your playoff chances out the window. Now, with 12 teams going through to the college playoffs this year, Michigan know exactly where they stand and where they sit. They were not good enough earlier today, but this is a really good get-right spot for them, and I feel like that's going to be the common theme. Week 1, it was the easy beats. Week 2, a couple of upsets. In week 3, it's a get-right spot for a lot of these national contenders. So I think for the Wolverines, they got to get back to run the football. They need to show a bit of polish, but I think they come with a fast start, and I think they could put up quite the number going against Arkansas State here. So I think it looks to be everything in favor. Back there in Ann Arbor at the Big House, they'll get it back to rocking and rolling.
I hope so. But speaking of rock and roll, you've got Boston College taking on Missouri. Boston College off to a hot 2-0 start. And I think that they're one of those teams that can continue to upset. I had to put my feelings aside for FSU and admit the fact that Boston was probably going to take over that game. That's exactly what we saw. But is Boston College a sneaky good team that can probably come in here and make some noise? Yeah,
sneaky good team. Missouri Tigers, they're also going to be a strong chance for this one. So I think this is a great game shaping up, a battle of two sides who have got a couple of pieces, a couple of new weapons that we're still trying to figure out where they really stack up. This is going to be a great showdown. Boston College, the old Eagles, taking on the Missouri Tigers. The Tigers, they should be hovering right around that 9 spot, 10 spot, but they are certainly one of the top 10, top 15 schools in the nation right now.
Hopefully they can keep their prowl ahead of that 10 spot and continue on. But if I'm not rooting for FSU, I have no problem supporting Boston College, so I'm here for an upset. But don't go anywhere. We've got to break down our betting cards and maybe just kind of have a small therapy session for what did not happen. So stick with us out the other side of this break.
Buy or sell, Anthony Richardson will be a top 7 fantasy quarterback this season. We're keeping this realistic here. We know and nobody would think that he'll be in the top 3, probably not even the top 5. How about top 7, George? Buy or sell?
If he stays healthy, top 5 is not out of question here at all. He's a running quarterback. We know how valuable they can be. My worry is going to be what I mentioned when we talked about the Indianapolis Colts. Boy, man, if Pittman were to go down, there's not a lot to throw. He'll be running for his life half the time there. I like Richardson a lot. Small sample size of what we saw of what he's going to be. I played the 5 games last year before the injury here. So over a longer season, we'll see if he gets some catch up to him, what he can do. He's going to have to prove he can throw the ball to be down the field here. I'm going to buy this. All right, I want to buy on Anthony Richardson. I want him to be that guy because I want to see the excitement that he can bring. I think smart money might say go the other way because there's so many quarterbacks in that tier that hey, he could have a good year and still not finish top 7. That being said, I think he will show just like he did last year. He's going to be dynamic. I'm buying top 7.
Yeah, reminds me so much of Cam Newton in the early days too. I'm going to sell on this. I think it's too high. I think most leagues take away points for interceptions. If that's the case, I think his numbers are going to be 20-something touchdowns, 15, 16-something interceptions. That's going to negate some stuff. Yes, he will run. Can he play an entire season? Still very questionable for me. I have him as the 9th best fantasy quarterback at the end of the season, just outside the top 7. So I'm going to go sell on that.
Welcome back into college football today, the post-game show. And we've got one more round of breakdowns for you. Kasey Hudson hanging out with Dubs Anderson. And it's time for us to put it on the line, Dubs. It's time for us to show the world what we did with our betting cards.
Do we have to? Is this mandatory? Hey, look, full transparency. And that's the great thing about this game. We had a decent showing in week 1. I tell you what, week 2. A couple of bad beats across the board. But Kasey, if you want to lead us off with the honors, the floor's all yours.
Wow.
Set the tone for me.
That's what you
Set
did
the
there.
benchmark.
I thought that you were just soothing everything. You were letting me know that it's okay. Bad breaks happen, and then you're going to throw your card up. But whatever, I guess I'll get this Burn Fest started. So let's just say I started off confidently with Iowa State taking on Iowa, having that, I got it. The under here was ridiculous, 35.5. But again, it has always been a historically low scoring game. I didn't really expect too much fire off from these offenses. I thought defense was going to just have a heyday, and that was not the case. Now, I didn't miss it by too much, but still, this was probably one that I thought was a lock and rolled over the minute I realized it was not. To add to that, then I had Iowa running back Moulton to have over 41.5 rushing yards. Yeah, guy barely got 20. Why? For absolutely no reason. Healthy, had himself some fun on the sidelines, but that's the problem. He was on the sidelines. You and I talked about this Baylor situation and the number of ways that it hurt, but I had Baylor's quarterback, Daquan Finn, over 18.5 rushing yards, only came up strong with 11. Baylor first half win. We're not even going to talk about that. We're actually going to pretend it's not on here. It never existed. I didn't say it. And then Utah, Cameron Rising, 200-plus passing yards. So please tell me you can match some of this misery, just a little bit of it.
Yeah, misery loves a little company. I was trying to claim that the graphics department may have messed up my bets, but no. Let's bring them up here. So I took Iowa on the money line. I thought this was as simple as it gets. It was going to be a rock fight, and I thought we had it going into the final couple of minutes. No, we didn't. 54-yarder, 20-19. That's a bad beat. Utah over 34.5 for their team total. Well, Cam Rising, stock falling with that hand injury. Certainly, once he left the field there in the second quarter, that was everything out the window for Utah. They went on to get the win, but it just wasn't enough. 23-12 to Baylor, 34.5. We didn't even get close once it was all said and done. Little Bama, minus 30.5. Now, this one, has it gone official? The final score here, Kasey, for Bama.
What was snuck right in there?
I'm gonna have to refresh the old betting account. What do we got as a final score? Bama roll Crimson Tide 42-16. That ain't enough, so we can chalk that one up in the losers column as well. Okay, that's the common theme here, week 2. Bad beat city for Dubsy. I took NC State, grabbing 8.5 points at home. Really like this spot. Don't like it so much now looking back. 51-10. That wasn't close. But we've got Miller Moss. We've still got Miller Moss here. It's late on a Saturday night for the USC, for the Trojans. He's out there in the mix. I think he's put up right around 80 passing yards through the first quarter. So Miller Moss is going to be the shining light for week 2 on what is a very, very mediocre looking betting card. So it was great in week 1, not so much in week 2, but transparency. That's the name of the game, and we live to fight another day.
100%. And you know what? I'm such a good friend that I'm actually going to ease this betting card and let you know that I went out and put out another betting card for the late slate. And honestly, let's see if it did worse. The quarterback whose name shall not be mentioned for Tennessee at this hour, 211 passing yards, and I had him going over 260. So we can put that to bed. Then I had McCoy for Tennessee to have this big day versus the secondary. Came in hot with 1 reception for 10 yards. So there we go. Another flop in the mix. Where I did secure a small bag was for Cade Kolbenek to grab a touchdown. He did get a chance to do that. Keith Adams, I thought the power back was going to go punching into the end zone, and that never existed. So I think I walked away with like 2. Oh, thank you guys. We have X's, we have check marks. Only 1 check mark on this card. Accountability feels a little heavy tonight, but you know what? It's fun. I made it through it with you, Dubs. It's okay.
Hey, you got a little plus money there as well for Klubnik. Plus 138. It's been a fantastic Super Saturday for week 2 in college football. Big upsets across the board. And for me, Texas, performance of the season thus far. They were special over there in Ann Arbor earlier today.
Yes, well, at least we've got a lot more football to look forward to and a lot of great college games coming up next week, which means you want to hang out with us again next Saturday at 11 o'clock here on SportsGrid.